Welcome back to Why Blank Lost for Big Brother 26. I'm David Bloomberg, and I have to admit that I really don't get the whole concept of charcuterie. I mean, it's just little slices of meat and cheese. I've heard it described as Lunchables for
Good.
adults. Maybe my younger co-host, Ovi Kabir, can explain it to me.
David, you're asking the right person because I love food. I love cheese. And Hannah, my fiance, she loves anything in bite size. So charcuterie is up our alley. It's a shame you haven't got any. I think a lot of our viewers will probably attest that charcuterie is the wave. So we're going to have to send David something he can try some shortly.
Okay. All right. Or I could just steal Angela's. I mean, that's the other option.
Exactly. What did you have on your bingo list that we would be a cold opener with charcuterie? I didn't have that on my bingo list, but it's here now. So
cold opener with cold meats and cheeses. So yes.
yes, sir. How are you doing, David?
Good. And I know you've had a heck of a busy week since we last spoke here. You covered some of it on social media. I'm just glad you were able to keep up with Big Brother while you were doing it all. It was nice of the players to keep things a little calmer and predictable for you this week.
Exactly. I love that, they told us right in the beginning what they're going to do. No changes whatsoever with the plan. No crazy veto ceremonies. It was such an easy week to follow. No, it wasn't, David. It was one of the hardest things of this entire week. I was in Aspen, Colorado. We were having a great time, a great trip, until I'm looking on my phone and realizing, wow, every single thing I was planning is kind of changing and it's blowing up, and I love it. Fortunately, I had notes on each of these people, and David helps me out throughout the week. And the great thing with this show, especially when we're on this week, and our viewers know this as well, usually you don't go home for one thing in just 1 week. It's past behavior, and we know why this person went home.
Yes. Yeah. Now, last week, I predicted that Rubina would be evicted, and no, wait. This is an old note. I predicted that 2 weeks ago. I don't even remember who I predicted last week. This is what happens. See, you get discombobulated here. But in any case, yeah, we have to look back, like you said, at why Brooklyn was. Because I was looking at that. Why would I have predicted Rubina? No,
I know. I don't think. Yeah, that would have been a crazy
that was
long
2
shot.
weeks ago. This week, like I said, I don't remember who I predicted. I might have been Brooklyn, and heck, it might have been Tucker. But more likely it was, did we do Quinn? No, you left Quinn. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
I might have said Brooklyn, actually.
Okay. It's possible.
I mean, you did Brooklyn. Okay, never mind. It doesn't matter. We'll let somebody else answer for us and go back.
Yes. Anyway, like you mentioned, yes, there are lots of reasons that Brooklyn was voted out, and we'll figure that out by the same path we always take, which is comparing how she played to a set of guiding rules I originally wrote 20 years ago in 2004 and have modified ever since. We'll analyze her actions using what we saw on TV, live feeds, interviews, and other information. And of course, the most recent version is posted at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrotherrules. As usual, we have some other things to discuss about the week in general before we get to the rules. Now, one of the main things I want to talk about is my preseason winner prediction, Quinn. Because this has been a roller coaster of a week for him, much of it a roller coaster of his own making. He went from being sure he was the target to finding out he wasn't, to not believing that he wasn't, to actually being taken off the block. Along the way, he almost blew up his game permanently when Tucker gave him one job. One job. Don't tell anyone he was a pawn. So Quinn told fellow nominee Brooklyn that he was a pawn. I have no idea what was going through his mind. Some people on social media have said, well, why would he trust Tucker? Well, it doesn't matter if he trusts Tucker. It's a risk-benefit analysis. Even if he doesn't believe Tucker at all, there is zero reward for telling Brooklyn and all the risk in the world. But like we've seen a couple other times, it seems like he just can't keep quiet. And he got very lucky this isn't the Why Quinn Lost podcast.
He did. And I'm curious to hear your thoughts as we go forward, whether Quinn has finally hit the lowest point in itself where He's been the threat so long that now maybe he might be on the come up because maybe he survived enough bullets here that he got lucky this week, and we might see him safe going forward. But yes, I do think in this position, right, I understand many people are saying that, Tucker might be, trying to mist him, put it out over his eyes. But Brooklyn's also on the block. There's probably no reason to tell her. And I do think the reason why is that Quinn and Tucker are two of the same type of players on different sides of the coin. I mean, they love chaos. They love trying to just throw around whatever they can. It's one of those things where we talked about it previous week where I feel like Tucker feeds on other people's energy. Like when he knows people are coming for him, he's just like, I am ready to keep on going. It gets him going and playing the game in such a chaotic way that I know there's been a lot of recent discourse of whether how well is Tucker playing, if he is actually the strategy of a winning strategy. We'll have to see. Quindo, on the same hand, I think he has a level of chaos to him that he likes to do that. And the issue is some weeks you need to have less chaos. And by having less chaos, that means not telling people every single thing that's on your mind.
Yeah. And in answer to your question, yes, I do think that he hit his lowest point. And I think that allowed us and the house guests to see a new side of him. I've talked previously about him being over exuberant and seeming fake. Well, this was definitely the real side of him. And, maybe it helped to get some other players on his side. Through the week, we saw him talking again to Chemo and to T-Core and to these other people. And some of them seem like they want to work with him.
And I think one thing is these relationships change as it goes further in the game, but they can also deepen. Like we said beforehand, that what we felt Quinn actually might be genuine when he wanted to work with Kimo and T-Core, but they felt, I'm not sure if we can trust him because if he's telling us this information, who else is he trusting? And we were like, that might be some backwards logic, but otherwise they just weren't trusting him. And we also mentioned that he might be playing a little bit of a persona in the house, so it's hard to turn that off. But now I think them adding up basically Quinn being on the bottom, being targeted multiple times, and now just still being opened up and genuine with others, they can start looking back at his past actions and being like, maybe we misread the situation. So like you said, he has survived long enough that now he might actually have a little bit more credibility. And maybe kind of like I like it. It's not a similar game by any means, but like the Taylor Hale game where she was targeted week in, week out, and eventually she survived the block long enough. And enemy number one, I think it was much longer than Quinn thus far. Then she was able to be like, people were like, okay, why don't we just work with her instead?
Yeah. All right. One thing I want to mention, by the way, for listeners on the audio podcast is you may notice that Ovi's microphone sounds a little bit different. What you're not seeing is he is still, I meant to mention this earlier. We talked about his travels. He is still on his travels. He is, outside doing this podcast in the middle of his travels. That is his level of dedication. But it also means he doesn't have his usual microphone. So, just to mention that, for people. Sorry about that. Meant to mention it earlier.
No, I appreciate you, David. I'm outdoors trying to certify, keep the wind away and everything else. So for any of our audio listeners, understand, please put the pitchforks down. The mics will be better next week.
Yes. Anyway, going back to the show, one other topic I want to mention here is it sure seems like if Brooklyn had won the AI arena, there would have been another flip and Chelsea would have been saved. Even as Rubina and Tucker got a lot closer on a personal level on the live feeds, it appears that Rubina would have joined the flip against his wishes on a strategic level, and everything would have been very interesting. Another flip against the HOH, another, lot of drama, but I guess we can't have everything we want.
Yeah, I mean, Rubina's she's a businesswoman. She's separating her emotions from her strategy, which again we love to see there. And I think this goes back and is such a testament to what BBAI is kind of doing to the game and making our lives a little bit harder right here, where nothing is set in stone until that game is played. And they say this about every twist, but this twist truly has made it becomes so difficult for the players to navigate
Yes.
conversations about who needs to go home, to really confirm things until basically last minute. I do like the twist. I'm hoping to see it go away soon enough because I want to still see the element of Big Brother where you kind of can plan things. It's so chaotic because of the BBAI.
Well, so you can plan things and so you can backdoor people. I
Yeah.
mean, if this continues too long, it's basically handing Tucker the game.
How many competition wins does he have right now? Do you have count?
I do not have a count. But the ones that he does have are in BBAI and veto mostly.
Mhm.
And so it's, a situation where you can't backdoor someone if, at worst, it's a coin flip that
Mhm.
they'll come back again. So makes things difficult for the players to plan as well. But anyway, the other thing I wanted to mention, and we'll obviously get to it when we're talking about the rules, but I wanted to say I was highly amused by Brooklyn being such a straight shooter and funny in her interviews. She said exactly what she thought of people. She took great pleasure in having eaten Angela's charcuterie meats and cheeses. And she kept saying things like, well, in the house they were like this, outside they're, but yeah, she shot straight.
Yeah, no, I think it's fun to watch somebody like Brooklyn play who's obviously a fan going into the show and wants to really enforce her will into the game, is just scared to play, and then leaving the home, house, even such a short time span. From interviews we can only see so much, but it seems like she's really taking it on the chin, understanding it's a game, and also, like, she came into the game having fun, is leaving the game having fun. Obviously she would want to go further, and we're going to talk about why she didn't exactly. But yeah, I mean, it's a nice change between her and Cedric. I feel like we've had people on this season really take it on the chin when they're going out from the game earlier than they expected, which is always nice to see.
Yeah. All right. Well, I don't have anything for our usual Julie Chen Moonves is wrong about blank segment. So yay. So is there anything or anyone else you want to discuss about the players before we get to the rules?
No, I'm ready to get into it. I guess I will say it's interesting where every single portion there's always a season, right, where some player you have is pivotal in all the moves or some sort of conversation when we talk about why somebody went home, so why blank lost. And I was thinking, before the season, this week started, I was like, I wonder if we're gonna have Tucker be a part of the equation again.
Yeah.
Maybe Tucker will be the one. Tucker is a big part of this conversation. For many of my reasons, we'll be talking. One word: why Brooklyn went home. Some of it herself, but Tucker's a big part of it. So
yes.
We've got
All
characters.
Right. Yeah. Well, before we get to the rules, I do want to mention that the Survivor version of the rules is available in a shorter and much more colorful version in poster form. You can go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed, scroll down to the poster and click on it. In addition to the poster, you can get the same design on a t-shirt or the checklist design, same shirt I'm wearing today, on a t-shirt. So again, go to robhasawebsite.com/yxlostfeed and click buy, order, enjoy. All right. Well, on Tuesday, Brooklyn told Rubina, I'm obviously not good at this game. That's why I'm sitting here, because I'm loyal. It's rather ironic that she said this to Rubina, who she definitely was not loyal to. But she also said in an interview that she trusted the wrong people. Do these accurately describe the reasons Brooklyn was evicted? Or were there a number of issues at play, with adherence to her version of loyalty being just one of them? It's time to figure out why Brooklyn lost. The first and most important rule is to scheme and plot. I think Brooklyn knew and understood this, but there's a difference between understanding and taking the right actions. Brooklyn at times said she was playing a loyal game and not lying. Yet we know that she did lie. If she was using that as a cover, great, good. I'm happy to see it. But it didn't really seem that way because she talked about it even after she was evicted, and said she was loyal to the people who first wanted her in their alliance. Now, it's great that people did keep asking her, and she knew the Ghostbusters provision of this rule, even mentioning that she came in knowing never to turn down an alliance. In other words, when someone asks if you want to be in an alliance, you say yes. So that part was good. She was brought into the Pentagon and the Collective and 5 Points, and she had a tight final two with Chelsea and seemed to have generally good connections. But one thing I noticed, even 3 weeks ago, was she was not actively making new alliances herself or pushing to get more people on her side. I wondered at the time if she was just trying to avoid appearing to scheme too much. But in retrospect, I don't think that was it. I think she was just happy with where she was. We discussed in the Why Cedric Lost podcast, it seems she and Chelsea were kind of on cruise control.
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment. I think one thing is we definitely did see her play the game, and she was in an abundance amount of different alliances. She could keep on naming the names of what group she was in. I mean, it was a Venn diagram of how many groups she was part of. But what we did see is that I think potentially she came being such a super fan as well too. Typically these past few seasons we've been seeing kind of a steamroll of alliances where it's a big group of players go against this smaller group of players and knock them one by one by one. Of course, there's a little difference here and there too. So I think by feeling so insulated within the many alliances that she was in, she felt that she didn't have to have that additional push in these later weeks to kind of reach out people on the outskirts. And so we kind of see her take a stronger stance and be very critical with the whole Tucker situation. We see when Rubina was the week beforehand when she thought she was going to go home, and she basically says, hey, the vote, the whole, you're going away. The team's against you. Really conveying that like there's one side of the house, I'm part of it, you're not really part of that. And so because of all those actions, we just see her falter a little bit and not able to continuously keep that momentum of getting people in there, because she knows how this game works. It's just it was misread.
Yeah, and in addition to not bringing people in, she actually pushed some people away, because early on it seemed like Brooklyn and Chelsea had a decent relationship with Mackenzie and Leah, but they let those two go. We'll get into the reasons Brooklyn gave for that happening later in the fourth rule, but the fact is they had plenty of opportunities to bring those two in, and they didn't. They left potential numbers just hanging in the wind. 10 days ago, as we're recording this, there was a side-by-side in the live feed cameras with Brooklyn and Chelsea on one saying they had Leah, while Leah was saying on the other one she felt like she was on the outs with those two. And I know Brooklyn felt comfortable with the Collective and the Pentagon, but you always need to think about yourself and how you can have the numbers on your side.
I think it's interesting to see when we compare of who's gone home before her. I feel like Brooklyn might be one of the players who's strategized one of the closest to the best in terms of who's been evicted. It was kind of more so that it wasn't that she was not doing it. She did it really badly. She just kind of got dice was rolled against her in certain ways, because like we said, it was just a swap of her winning that BBAI, and she's probably still here. But it's more so that she got misplayed, misread a little bit. But I think more than anything is that she needed to continue what she was already doing, and we didn't see that from her.
Yeah. And that, none of the things we've discussed so far are specifically the reason she became a target. They were contributing factors to why she remained a target and couldn't get out of it. And we'll obviously talk more about becoming the target as we get into other rules. But once T-Core and Chemo decided to flip things around, one way that happened was because Mackenzie and Leah were available as votes. And then once the flip against Cedric did happen last week, Brooklyn found herself in a new situation. However, she continued to make mistakes that ensured she would remain the target. For example, she told Mike Bloom, I had two choices. I could lie and try to pin it on someone else. But I felt in that moment that I had got to say it very matter of fact. So I chose to be honest, and I chose to kind of lean into the emotion and try to really sell like I had no reason to do it other than the house was saying you were going home. It clearly didn't work. But the thing is, she had another choice that she apparently didn't consider: just being fully honest and asking forgiveness. Admit the existence of the collective. Try to work something out. But instead, she and Chelsea spent a lot of time together when they should have been trying to wrangle votes. And, she told Leah McKenzie and Chelsea that she wouldn't even campaign because she had 2 chances to take herself off the block. That is a terrible way to think about it, especially knowing that Tucker was one of the people she was up against in the veto comp. She should have been trying to draw people in, and if she happened to win veto, great. Instead, she waited and once again just allowed things to kind of happen around her.
Yeah, very well said. And the only thing I'll add to that too is that I think it's one of those situations, right, when you have a sinking ship and it's going down, that you need to start looking at rafts. You need to find a lifeboat for yourself, and also knowing that there's other people. You're not the only one sinking. There's other people sinking near you. And this situation was Quinn. If you don't try to get somebody, if you don't try to spread the information first, you're going to get beat. And if you get beat to that, only one person. There's only so many life rafts for people.
Right. And, speaking of other people, it's interesting to compare how Brooklyn acted to what Chelsea did after she was nominated. Of course, in the veto meeting. Right away, Chelsea started talking to people, shoring up relationships, trying to lock in votes. Meanwhile, Brooklyn sulked and whined and complained. T-Core even said at one point that if Brooklyn had handled it the way Chelsea did, she would have been in a better position. But by the end of the week, we were in a situation where people were willing to flip to save Chelsea if Brooklyn had won AI Arena, but they weren't going to do it for Brooklyn when Chelsea won. If Chelsea had won.
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes back to also the really good social game Chelsea has played by far in a lot of ways. And we kind of saw that in week 1, in where she was supposed to be a target. She had been downgraded, Nick Cedric, but we found her, be able to work her way there. I think with Chelsea, I mean, I don't want to get too much into it because it's not the why Chelsea lost, but that type of, we saw what Brooklyn needed to do, what Chelsea was doing, that start continuously use your social game that you have been using but thus far when you're in danger.
Yeah. Now, in Brooklyn's extended interview with Julie, she said that she didn't respect the game moves of T-Core and Chemo because they all, quote, had a good thing going to get to final 8. And then immediately admitted that, of course, those 2 would have been the first to go. But then she still acted like they should have been happy with that because now they're going to be out next and only be used for numbers. Now, first, we'll see about that. But this is another fault in the way she was thinking. Really? They should have just been happy to go along to get 8th or 7th place. Brooklyn tried making the case after losing AI Arena that people should play to win, not to come in second. So why shouldn't Chemo and T-Core do the same thing to avoid coming in 7th or 8th? It was a fault in the way she thought about how other people would view the game in terms of strategizing.
Yeah, no, it's that, you fall in that pit trap of thinking that your line of thinking is unique, and you're basing it off that other people won't be thinking like you do when maybe you need to be doing that. What would you do in your own preservation mode? So imagining other people want to do that. So, but I think we're seeing a common trend of a lot of people feeling betrayed by T-Core and Chemo, that they're underestimating them because of maybe their very demure personality, very cutesy, mindful. I don't know if that made sense to you, David. That's a trend going on right now.
Yes. I'm hip with all the kid lingo.
Exactly. That is true. That's true. I actually, we need to do I'll do a shout out later on for you. We'll wait till the end part.
Okay. Speaking of the way she was thinking, one thing I've noticed this season is that whichever person or side is not in power seems to believe they know everything that's going on in the game, but they're actually clueless. We've talked about this before. It was Tucker until he became HOH. And then it became Brooklyn and Chelsea once he did. And as an example, beyond what I just mentioned about her views on T-Core and Chemo, Brooklyn kind of dismissed the work those 2 did and told Dalton Ross they just let their emotions get the best of them and they couldn't let go of Rubina. And this ignores the fact that they value Rubina as a game ally, not just a friend. Other examples of Brooklyn thinking she has it when she doesn't include some things she said in her extended interview with Julie. For example, she said that Joseph isn't doing anything. He isn't a gamer. He doesn't even want to be there. He has her totally snowed because that's his move. He wants to keep himself away from people. He wants to act like he doesn't know or care what's going on. We'll evaluate at some point whether that was good or not. But for now, he completely fooled her. And meanwhile, she's saying in her interviews that Quinn is the best player in Big Brother history. And as much as I like the guy, and of course I still want him to win because he was my preseason prediction, I'm sorry, but he's not the best player in Big Brother history, at least not yet. If he could dig himself out of this hole and, sail to victory, I will reevaluate at that time.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of ground for Quinn to cover. It's interesting to see Brooklyn's perspective on it, but I also try not to give too much thought on that specific portion because she's just coming out of the house. Things change, and when you're someone explained to me before, when you're warm in the apple, you can't see how the apple looks on the outside, and so that's the situation for her in that. It might take some time to see it from there, but it's always is like enlightening to know the POV of house guests leaving. I think it'll be more impactful as we get into the jury segment to see how many people actually value T-Core's and Chemo's own agency in the game, because right now they're seeing it as an emotional flip. And so because she's viewing it like that, that might not be so different than some of the other players. So what we're seeing is that they're not valuing them having agency in the game. So it's a blind spot for them versus T-Core and Chemo kind of controlling this in the last vote in a way.
Yes. All right, well, we can move on to the second rule, which says not to scheme and plot too much and to keep your scheming secret. Brooklyn has insisted that she was not leading the Pentagon, and she's right. But the problem is that facts don't always matter. Perceptions do. And she knew that the idea of her being in control had been floating around the house for at least a couple weeks now. She needed to do something to address that. But it seemed like once they voted Kenny out, she seemed to think the problem went away, and it clearly did not. Brooklyn told Mike Bloom, I guess I can say I'm flattered now that Tucker thought I was a mastermind and this puppeteer that was running things. I literally was never even supposed to be in the collective. That was an accident. I just kept getting asked to be in these alliances. Someone had to be the fall boy, and they painted it as me week 4, and here I am. But again, what did she do to counter this notion? She hung out with Chelsea, made it clearer than ever that the two of them were an unbreakable duo, which of course is something that's more likely to get you targeted. Brooklyn even told Tucker there was no reason to hide who they like in the house, and her person is Chelsea. Yes, there was reason to hide it, Brooklyn. But then on top of that, she and Chelsea took an attitude that made T-Core and Chemo feel like they weren't valued allies, but were just votes to be told what to do. Now, sure, some of that came from Joseph pushing the narrative on purpose, but the situation was such that it was easy for Chemo and T-Core to agree with because they saw the same thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's the same, the trend again of figuring out if you can trust T-Core and Chemo as being a downfall of some of these players. They're trusting him too much or not giving him that level of agency. And the thing is perception is reality in the Big Brother house. It does not matter what our reality is as we watch the show, what the live feed show. It's just what each player thinks is going on. And so this idea that she is overplaying, she is the mastermind, she's part of all these things there. And like you said, she didn't try to counter any of it, was a big portion of her downfall. I mean, that's why it made the rest of the house realizing, one, it's a target for the people who might not be completely in the know of it, but also, two, for the people who are already in the collective, already in the alliances that she is part of, realizes, hey, actually, we just got our fall guy. We just got the person, our martyr. It's kind of like when the CEO steps down, huge package subsidy. Issue is she's not getting a huge package as she steps down and gets fired or resigns.
No golden parachute for her.
No, exactly. For her, it's just a parachute straight out to Julie Chen Winvez's interviews. And so what we're seeing right here happen is that if you don't counter the misinformation going on in the house, when you know it is, and you can actually give
Mm-hmm.
information to counter it, it's going to become reality, and it is in reality.
Yeah, I mean, going back to Kenny pushing the idea that she was the mastermind, even Joseph said at one point that Tucker might still have Kenny in his head about her controlling things. And I do think that played a role. Tucker, I mean, who did Tucker hang out with those days? Kenny. He kept hearing that, and I think it just made its way into his brain. We know once Tucker gets an idea in his head, it is virtually impossible to get it out. Not to mention, he felt betrayed because she was supposedly in the 5 Points Alliance with him and yet never disclosed information about the collective and the Pentagon to him. Now, of course, from her point of view, that's because she only joined 5 Points, mostly to report back to the other alliances, and she was never loyal to 5 Points. But, well, that knowledge sure wouldn't have made Tucker feel any better.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's kind of the interesting thing with Brooklyn is that she was able to get part of so many different alliances and put herself and cement herself in really pivotal roles where she wasn't the main ringleader. She wasn't pushing at it. So it's so frustrating for her not to own that she wasn't, or literally just throw somebody else under the bus. I think the writing on the wall was there that Quinn was going to throw them under the bus in some shape or form. I honestly don't even say throw under the bus. Quinn just had to do something. I mean, he had every single thing. It wasn't like they were truly helping him out moving forward. They lost a lot of steam. So, yeah, I mean, I just feel like Brooklyn was and is a lot smarter of a player than she played the last few moves and how she kind of moved in the house this week.
Yeah. Now, I want to close out this rule by talking about something Brooklyn said both in the house and then again to Julie in her extended interview. Inside, she complained about the people who stayed quiet and said if she went out, at least it wasn't as a floater, as if there was some big brother encyclopedia somewhere that would note that important point alongside what place she came in. Like came in, voted out this week, asterisk, was not a floater. No, it's not there. It doesn't matter. And then she told Julie, I would rather play the game than be a floater like some of them. If I came out because I played the game, I came out because I played the game. Well, yeah, you came out in part because you played the game in a way that made it seem like you were over playing the game. Lying low is often a much smarter strategy. In this house, especially, there are plenty of big personalities. Let them fight and see where everything ends up. As it is, like Joseph would be one of these people she's talking about as a floater. She doesn't even realize how much influence he has. But Brooklyn could not bring herself to play that kind of game, so she dismisses it, even though that's part of the reason she ended up going out so soon.
Yeah, no, I think one, like we said, a few certain interviews, I try not to give so much clout into thinking because they're trying to justify why they went home, and maybe it's a defense mechanism in there. But yes, I think in a house when you have them completely full of people with huge personalities, it's probably better to lay low, that we've seen other players do. But we've also seen people who have really spiked up and then try to bring their threat level way down low. I mean, I feel like Mackenzie, she had a big threat level since week 1, and then she's winning competition. She's kind of found ability to kind of bring it down a little bit more where other people have risen up. Quinn is a perfect example this week. I mean, you need to have that fluidity. You don't have to be full on always or full off. And I mean, again, we're so early in the game. I think some people who leave and get frustrated about this, realizing this is a game of 99 days. It is much smarter to kind of work your way out there because none of these people leave. They're not going to vote for you to win. So it doesn't matter how many great, incredible moves you make.
Yeah. All right. Well, the third rule talks about the need to be flexible. This week, Brooklyn told Angela on the live feeds that going forward, if she had gone forward, she knew she needed to do this, to be flexible. But looking back on her game, how do you think Brooklyn actually did here?
It's tough because I don't feel like, and you and I have argued about this in the past, right? Like you have to be, I feel like in a situation, pushed to have your flexibility be shown, and then sometimes you won't have situations to do it. In this situation, Brooklyn did have had many opportunities to be flexible and try something out differently, and not working. I mean, I think this week was the week for it, where she realized, oh wait, I'm not exactly with the numbers. I need to figure out some way to work, with the people who might not exactly be on my side. And instead, we kind of alluded to this in the first part of it, that she really doubled down and tried to work with Chelsea and all the other people around her, and be like, all right, you know what, Tucker, I'm going right at you. I'm going to get you. Angela's not my friend. All these people here, I know what I need to do. I'm going to work with them and make it happen. Well, the numbers said a different story last week. It probably is not going to, it didn't work last week. It's not going to work this week, especially for someone like Cedric, who is basically universally liked within the whole house. And I guess here's my question to you. So my answer is, I don't think she did the best flexibility-wise, but do you feel like the players would be more apt to be more flexible? Like maybe she's much more capable of it if it wasn't for BB Arena. Do you think it's because of that they're deciding not to try to go down that route?
Well, I mean, it is interesting because one thing Brooklyn told Dalton Ross was, with the format changes in the game this year, quote, you had to be flexible, and Tucker's not flexible. So she was criticizing him, but in doing so, she seemed to be implying that she was flexible, and that simply wasn't the case. Now, I think, if anything, you need to be more flexible with the AI arena, because you have to have options. You have to have more options, and you can't just play the same way that it's been. She's right about that part. Where she's not right is whether or not she did it, because all we have to do is look at one thing Brooklyn said in the game in interviews about how she gave her loyalty to the people who wanted it, and she wasn't going to change. So basically, she locked in with her first allies, and she was not going to adapt to change things up as the game progressed. Things change in Big Brother. The alliance that you start with is very often not the alliance you end up with. And there can be many steps along the way. You need to be willing to make the right moves to take those steps. But Brooklyn just, boom, locked herself in.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be able to work with other people. And it's interesting you say that it forces you to be more flexible, because I guess there's different strategies obviously you can utilize with that. I think right now for Tucker, I would almost argue Tucker has been pretty flexible, but more than that too, I think that with the BB Arena, leaving fear that no one wants to probably put Tucker up if he's available, because they think he has not 2 shots to come down there. Keeping that in your mind, figuring out who you're going against. It's unfortunate, because I don't know. Maybe she would have played it differently. Otherwise, she knew that there's a backdoor, other capabilities in there, because she is such a gamer. She knows this game from front to back, but we just simply didn't see it from her.
Yeah. All right. Well, the fourth rule says players should not let their emotions control them. And Brooklyn had issues with a couple aspects of this rule. One of those she laid out in response to a question Mike Bloom asked her in her post-game interview with him. She noted that, as we discussed in the first rule, she and Chelsea were close with Mackenzie and Leah early, but then distanced themselves. Brooklyn said, you just start forming who you actually like in the house. And that was hard for me, I guess, to cover up. There were people that I just enjoyed being around more. And it ended up being Chelsea and Cedric and Cam, truly. Not just because they were my alliance. I just started to blend and mesh with them. And as much as I tried at the beginning to keep a smile on my face and talk with everybody and hang out, there's just some people that are really annoying, and personally, I just didn't care for. Now, the thing is that that's emotional thinking, and it needs to be pushed aside in the game of Big Brother. And I know it's not easy. I know they're there 24/7 for weeks or potentially months. But you can't just decide to abandon people in the game because you don't want to be near them and would rather hang out with your pals all the time.
I think, there's 2 ways to utilize your emotions in this game, and those ways, probably more than 2 ways, but primary 2 ways is, one, letting it fuel you, which we've seen Tucker use it in a positive way. It's been an argument that we've seen him try to take his level of revenge and anger and let that, make him win these competitions. Be like, I need to do this. And the other one is let it consume you in a way that falters your ability to work with other people. So unfortunately, I think every player is emotional to some aspect. And I think for Brooklyn, it impacted her in such a way where she closed off all doors to other people.
Right.
She didn't want to continue. And I think this, plus her, I would say this cost her inflexibility from the rule beforehand.
Yes.
And, it's frustrating because, you hear her why she wants to win Big Brother. She talks about she wants to be, I think, I'm trying to remember exactly how she phrased it, but I think the first mother to win Big Brother was kind of
the married mother.
Yeah.
She wants to show her kids that you can do this and everything else. Yes.
Exactly. So I think that's such a emotional reason to want to win, which isn't a bad thing. That fuels her, right? But unfortunately, I don't think she was able to separate her emotions about who she wanted to work with to try to reach that goal.
Right. And then the other part is that she had a problem with her anger. She claimed she didn't get mad. She just got even, but she got mad. And that was often apparent on her face, such as especially when Cedric was blindsided. And it never really went away after that. She tried to cover it up. She tried to make up stories to portray herself as the victim. It never worked. And that made it more likely that she would be the primary target and less likely that people would want to work with her.
I don't think I've ever heard anyone say the phrase, I don't get mad, I just get even without actually being mad. They're like seething, but I don't get mad, I get even. Like, so you get revenge, you go John Wick on them. Like, that sounds like you get kind of upset. Like, they get even. It seems like it. So, that's funny you said that.
Yeah, and that goes back to, like you had said, just Tucker takes his anger or whatever you want to call it and channels it. She took her anger and pushed people away more. This leads nicely into the fifth rule, which says players need to pretend to be nice and play the social game. And indeed, I considered putting both of the things we just discussed in this rule because both involved her not being able to pretend to be nice. But since those were for emotional reasons, I left it in the fourth rule. But we still have some things to talk about here. Coming into the game, Brooklyn said she intended to use her conversation as a secret weapon and wanted to get to know people inside and outside the game because if you learn about them in general, they'll want to keep you. Obviously, things didn't go so well in either of those two areas.
No, it didn't. I mean, and here's the thing is that Brooklyn's personality in the beginning, like week or two, I think a lot of people watching the show was, was she be too abrasive? What role she gonna do? Because from her interview, she's very forward. Kind of want to say, I'm ready to match any conversation energy. So your worry would be, maybe they would rub people the wrong way. But with Brooklyn, actually, in fact, she was able to navigate socially and be around groups of people in a good way. But the issue was that continuing that steam and not letting that be impacted to you in other ways. If you want to, in the beginning parts, it wasn't hard for her to be nice to players because she felt that way.
Right.
She wanted to be with them. But by that week, and you got to keep in mind, this game is long. Survivor is done by the time this week starts over. Like, you've been with these people for so long. So, I put a little anecdote. I always say if my fiance Hannah Claire, she would go. People would always ask before, would Hannah be on the show and things like that. And I'd always laugh because I think she would absolutely kill any show she'd be on, do this type of social thing. She's very lovable, much more lovable than me. But her social energy. I mean, she said, and she'll say it herself. After a week, she's like, I would want to try self-evict or have them evict me because I'd try to take out every single person because I couldn't pretend to be nice with any of them. I would just want to be mean to all of them. And I think that's the reality of it. It doesn't matter how good of your play. You have to have such a tolerance and a poker face and keep that on for months and months on to actually win the game.
Yes.
So it's tough.
Yeah. Now, there are a number of examples of other things going wrong for Brooklyn here. We could laugh, and we did, at Angela's charcuterie stuff that Brooklyn and Mackenzie ate. But the fact is, they should have realized that Big Brother is a social game. Did it play a deciding role? No. But would Angela always remember it? Absolutely, as we saw in her goodbye message.
I mean, if there's one person who's going to hold a grudge probably longer than Tucker, it's Angela in the game. But we've seen, and they know that from week one, from the monologue to probably one of the most iconic speeches we've gotten for Big Brother history for a very long time. You don't want to make Angela mad.
Yeah. Now, another area was Brooklyn's decision to purposely mess up Tucker's clothes during the hide-and-go veto comp. She did it for purely non-game reasons, and Tucker got pissed. Then she let him rant and rave against Quinn. Everyone figured out it was her, but she maintained through the end of her game that she didn't do it, even when Tucker directly questioned her, which only solidified that she was lying to all of them. We've seen Tucker sometimes willing to forgive people if they come clean to him, much like Quinn did this week. And I think Tucker would have considered it if Brooklyn had fessed up. Now, it might not have changed anything. There's no way to know. But the thing is, she never should have done it to begin with. You're on the block. Why would you want to do something that further pisses someone off?
I think also, I hate to keep bringing it back to Tucker in so many ways because they're so interconnected on this. Mm-hmm. We talked about Tucker when he was like on the block and saying, oh, maybe I should just go put myself on a block when he did that, and then I'll win this BBAI. And the next week he was like, maybe I should do this again. It's this level of risk mentality that you feel like you might go home, or you just are like kind of done with certain things that you're just like ready to like go all in. Mm-hmm. You're just like, I got a pair of jacks, I'm going all in. Bad move probably, but hope the river gets you. And so with Brooklyn, I feel like she's a perfect example. She kind of already felt like, I'm just going to go all in. I don't like Tucker. I'm going to just do anything I can do to kind of piss him off and just let it be. And this is kind of the adverse parts of it, Yes. Correlation isn't causation. Tucker kind of got lucky in this situation in a lot of ways. Brooklyn got what the odds probably told her, that if you continuously do this to make people upset, if you go all in, you're going to go home.
Yeah, and the thing is, generally speaking, some of the other players already didn't have particularly good feelings about Brooklyn from a social standpoint. Joseph called her self-righteous. Angela talked about how she started to feel bad when Brooklyn was discussing her mom's cancer, and then kind of shook it off because she felt, well, Brooklyn hadn't shown her any empathy previously, and, quote, it's not like we're going to be friends or anything. So it was just, it's not necessarily one thing. It's like this steady drip, drip, drip of different things occurring, and her continually having these issues come up.
And the one thing I'll just lastly say on this thing is too, is like, I love how you say it's drip, drip, dripping, because what it is that you're stuck in that house with nothing else to think about. You're caged in there. There's no new material going on except what you guys entertain yourself. So as you sit there and you start thinking about, wait, how did they react to how I said that weeks ago? Well, you that ferments in your mind. And so as the game gets longer, all these smaller actions that you've done thus far might have not been big at that point, but they start leading up to this huge mess, because as it's dripping, that faucet eventually will make a pool, that pool makes a pool, and that pool drowns you. And maybe the pool, maybe it becomes the beach water, I don't know. It gets you. And that's what happened with Brooklyn in this situation.
Yeah. All right, well, we can go to the sixth rule, which warns against being too much of a threat. And for most of the week, Brooklyn insisted she wasn't one, as we discussed earlier. But then at the very end, after she lost the AI arena, she told everyone basically that they should keep her because she was a threat to Tucker. She later told Dalton Ross, he's scared of me. He is scared of someone that's smarter than him. He is scared of someone that has more cojones than him. And that's me. Which is true. He should be. And I am not someone that backs down. Now, I can see why she wanted to try to make that case at the end. And it's good. Try to fight for your life. Try to get something out there. But there were a few pieces missing from that logic puzzle. The first problem was that as of that moment, people are still too afraid to go after Tucker because of AI Arena. Second, let's say they did keep her, and she did somehow win HOH despite not winning anything to this point, because she's making the case, keep me and I will win HOH and go after Tucker. Well, what's your proof that you're going to win HOH when you literally haven't won anything yet? But okay, who would she nominate? Tucker for sure. But if you know he has a good chance of winning AI Arena, it would be someone else who would end up going. She was pleading to the very same people who she would put in danger. So in that way, she was a threat to many of them as well.
Yeah, with the BBAI twist, like you say, it's we're putting 3 people up, so she still has to put 2 people at risk, and one of those being Tucker, or 3 people with 2 other people other than Tucker at risk. Tucker's probably going to win in their minds. And more than anything, too, you're at such an early point in the game still that people aren't so worried that we need to have another threat to take this threat out.
Yeah.
The idea is we can probably outlast Tucker eventually, because if like the rest of the house is against Tucker, the moment he doesn't win an HOH or a competition, we can get him out. That's kind of the mindset. Versus also, like, why would we want to keep another threat in the house?
If she even was, I mean, if she was one,
Exactly. I commend her for trying to take some other stance to make it work, because at that point you need a Hail Mary. I do think if she really wanted to take that route, maybe she should have gone for that beforehand, because at that point it's that the BBAI competition is going to happen one way or the other. So if you win it, great, you got butter there. If not, though, you've already cemented in your head that, hey, Tucker is coming for y'all. Because I also think Chemo and Tico were kind of a little worried about the monster that they created in Tucker of helping him out this week. So I feel like if she really solidified how she was, that she is the commander of these things, I take credit for that. I understand what we have in front of us, and it is that monster called Tucker. In the terms of Big Brother, not outside, but in the terms of the monster called Tucker, we need to take him out. Maybe some of them would have been like, you know what? I don't hate having 2 factions of a warheads going at each other and leaving us there. But at that point, she only took credit to be the big bad villain at the end.
Yeah. You mentioned Tikor and Chemo, and I think part of the problem there is, we already discussed how she said she intended to get rid of them around Final 8. And the same was true of Joseph. Quinn knew all of that and had passed it along. Rubina already knew that Brooklyn was willing to toss her aside. Mackenzie and Leah were no longer in her orbit. So allowing her to stick around kept someone with a tight duo and a couple other allies while putting so many others at risk.
No, you're right. I mean, overall, the threat level of hers continued to get bigger and bigger, and then she accepted it at the end. So
Right. All right, well, the 7th rule says to trust almost nobody. And when Dalton Ross asked Brooklyn why she lost, this was basically the rule she cited, not by number, in addition to not winning comps, saying, I trusted the wrong people maybe. But honestly, I wouldn't change a thing when it comes to that. I was loyal to the first people that wanted my loyalty, and I wasn't going to budge on it. And it bit me in the butt. Now, there's a lot to unpack in that statement, some of which we already have. First, yes, she did trust the wrong people. Indeed, there was a whole chain of failed trusts here. She trusted members of the Pentagon and the collective, including Quinn. Quinn told the visionaries. Chemo told Tucker, and it just swirled around from there. Beyond that, saying she wasn't going to budge on giving her loyalty and trust, well, that goes back to part of what we discussed in the 3rd rule. And of course, I think all regular listeners know my thoughts when someone who goes out this early says, I wouldn't change a thing. Well, you should have. But also, of course, we spent the last 6 rules discussing many other things she did wrong. So while trusting the wrong people was certainly a contributing factor, it was by no means the full answer to Dalton's question.
Very much said. Like, that's very well said. There's not much I can add to that except the fact that it took me completely off my train. But I just thought about a reality of a world where if somebody literally quoted and was like, you know what, rule number 7 from David Bloomberg's Why It's Lost is the reason why I went home. And I hope somebody who watches this or listens to this, when they go on the show, when you go out, say one of those things. All right, I will pay for your travel where you need to go. We'll make that happen, because that would be such a clip. But that being said, so many other reasons. And here's the thing: is everyone trusts somebody typically in the Big Brother house, and when that trust is broken, it's what you do afterwards. There, she didn't trust someone so much that it sunk her entire game. unfortunately, it was her own doings in that matter because she had enough time to change it up. It wasn't like a day beforehand that she told her greatest ally that this happened. So it's one of those situations that she had a lot of other people too that could have been thrown under the bus. She could have worked towards that there. There's one person who was probably the one person that she could have expected to do this and who had the least amount of credibility too. So if she kind of attacked Quinn publicly on this, I really think she could have backtracked everyone's thoughts on it.
Yeah. Yeah. As far as the quoting, it's been done, not by rule number, but by quoting the rule all the way back. Sheehan, way back when, in her final words said, I was voted out for violating, the well-known, I can't remember her exact words. I should know this, but by plotting and scheming too much. And I'm sitting there at home watching that going, what did she just say? And
what?
A couple others. Yeah.
You need to send me that. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That is cool. Very
cool. But anyway, coming back up to, now.
How meta.
Yes. Despite saying that she wouldn't change a thing, one thing Brooklyn did say to Rob and Taryn was that looking back, she probably should have locked in Quinn into a final 2, so he would have been more loyal to her. But she didn't because she already had several final 2s. Now, the funny thing is, he, of course, had final 2s with just about everyone and even talked on the live feeds about getting her into one because it would have been hilarious. She's probably right that she should have done it from a theoretical standpoint, but I don't know that it would have meant a lot to him in terms of like keeping him more loyal to her as opposed to the Visionaries.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Maybe if she was able to do one, he might have second thought who to throw under the bus. Yeah. And then because he was thinking, who could I? If they had some form of connection, he could have at least gone to her in some shape or form and tried something before doing something there. So you never know. It's hindsight's 2020.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things that it would have never hurt her, in any situation, right. Most likely with right. That stuff, with them being intertwined in so many other alliances.
Yeah, and I mean, they did have a good relationship. They were close. I mean, that was why Quinn stupidly told her, about the pawn situation. They just didn't have the official final 2 deal,
Yeah.
All right. Well, it is about time to wrap things up. So what are your final thoughts about Brooklyn?
Yeah. Well, Brooklyn came into the game strong, and I think we can say the very same thing of her leaving the game. She was impressive in the way she really maneuvered initially in the game and got herself in alliances where, honestly, I didn't know what to expect out of Brooklyn. She had a social game. We didn't really see much of a competition game, but she had a personality, and I think that's something a lot of people really enjoyed watching her on the show push out. Unfortunately, I think that personality kind of took over in a lot of ways as she stopped playing the social game and started focusing on how she felt other players were doing or treating her in that. She kind of played the game, unfortunately, like we've seen in past season, where it's one big alliance versus a lot of smaller people, and that didn't work out because we're seeing a lot more flexibility within these alliances, and that kind of got her. So I think the main thing that got her was her inflexibility that ended up taking her home. And then the one person, I know he wasn't the whole part of it, but I will say the one word, Tucker. She met into the wall that is Tucker, like many other players right now. We will see how many other people that Tucker consumes, but Brooklyn was one of them.
Yeah. Well, yeah, as you said, Brooklyn came into the game, strong. She was a fan who thought she'd do well in many aspects, saying that she would have a strong game on each side with its physical, mental, social strategy, to the point she asserted that she would be the house guest that people start mentioning after this season. I said in the pregame that she was too overconfident. I still stand by that now. I also think that overconfidence followed her into the game. She didn't win comps, but she did get brought into what appeared to be solid alliances, and she thought she had trusted allies. This led her to enter into kind of a cruising mode where she stopped playing hard and ensuring people were still on her side. Her emotions caused her to hang out almost exclusively with those she liked the most and not with those she got annoyed with, which seems natural on a human level, but you can't just act that way in a game like Big Brother. This allowed players to move away from her and into the orbits of others. Meanwhile, for reasons both real and imagined, Brooklyn became Tucker's public enemy number one. He had thought she was a problem earlier, but people told him he was wrong. Once he became HOH and Brooklyn allowed her anger to show while she made poor excuses for her vote, it turned into confirmation in his mind that she had been a problem all along. And by that point, she had already lost the support of those she needed to stick around. I mentioned earlier that Brooklyn said if she went out, at least she wasn't a floater. Well, okay, she went out, and pretty much nobody is going to care about that floater thing. But she could have learned some tips from them. Don't stand out so much. Don't share all your opinions. Don't form an obvious tight duo along with multiple other alliances that people know about. And don't let those floaters, well, float away from you. Brooklyn was initially targeted because of the perception that she had too much power and control. But then when she needed it, she didn't actually have enough power or any control. And that is why Brooklyn lost. So,
well said. Well said.
Thank you. Thank you. We will have our spoiler-free predictions in a moment after a few other pieces of information. In addition, if you want our full spoilery thoughts, we, of course, are all over social media.
Yes, don't forget that both of us are very active on a number of different social media platforms where we discuss Big Brother and other topics. On Twitter, I'm at the Ovi Kabir. On Instagram, I'm at Ovi Kabir. And on TikTok, I'm at Basmati Boy. David is truly all over all the place. There are a few ways to track him down. You can find him on his various accounts through his Linktree at Linktree/David Bloomberg. But you can find him on Twitter and Blue Sky at David Bloomberg, and on Threads, Instagram, and all other video platforms. You can find him at David Bloomberg TV. And what I was going to say before David, actually, I was like, oh, I'll wait till this portion of it, was congratulations, because you have been blowing up everywhere. On YouTube, I think you just hit a milestone of followers or subscribers on there.
Yes, I have over 35,000 YouTube subscribers. So
that's absolutely awesome. So if you guys are listening or watching this and haven't followed David and got his insight like on there, because it's like short form, it's great. It's like why X lost pushed in together very quickly. You can follow him on those platforms.
Well, thank you. Yes. And, since Big Brother has been on, I've been posting 3 or even more videos per day on all of those platforms. They're mostly Big Brother right now. Those are a combination from the show, from the live feeds, and my own thoughts at times about things that happen. And also, we've got Claim to Fame, The Amazing Race Canada, the Anonymous, which just started. I have some from there. Of course, that has Big Brother winner Xavier on there, as well as some others. And so, yeah, check out all those various accounts. All right. Time for predictions. As I mentioned, our predictions are spoiler-free. That means I wrote this up before I knew the outcome of the HOH comp. And Ovi, he's been traveling. He still doesn't know the outcome of the HOH comp. So we know at least Tucker can't win. But we don't know anything about the upcoming comp, so it could be anything and anyone. The most interesting outcome would be Quinn winning and backdooring Tucker, but that seems unlikely. I think it'll end up being someone in the 6th Avenue Alliance who wins. And then the question is whether they do what Tucker wants or they turn on him. I could see the nominees being Cam, Chelsea, and Quinn. And I think by the time all is said and done, they're just going to go with the kind of the easiest route, and Cam will be the one leaving us.
Interesting. Okay. I do not know what's going on right now, so I don't know who's won. I'm throwing my vote, though, as the law of averages. I think somebody who might be in the minority might win this. And people who know that they probably need to win this are Quinn and I think Cam. I want to say Cam actually is going to win. I think Cam's going to win, and I think he's going to take a shot at Tucker, still put him in. I think anybody who is not Tucker, even if it's not maybe T-Core Chemo, I think they're going to try putting Tucker up anyways because you need to see if you have a chance there. Put Tucker up there. And these weeks are so hard because it only matters who wins BBAI.
Yeah.
Goes there. but maybe T-Core and Chemo might get blown up this time. It's so tough to say because who will be pawns really, but
Right.
maybe some combination of McKenzie. But I'm going to say Cam wins, Tucker goes up there, Chemo goes up there, and we're going to throw McKenzie up there for a pawn. And then I think Tucker gets himself down, and we see it between McKenzie and Chemo, and McKenzie goes home. That's my prediction.
All right. All right.
And I'm sorry. And as we wrap up, I want to encourage everyone to check out our RHAP patron program at robhasawebsite.com/patron. Rob has several patron-only podcasts for Big Brother, plus other perks like the Facebook groups and Discord. You can help support shows like ours and everything on the network by becoming a patron at robhasawebsite.com/patron.
And make sure you're subscribed to all of the RHAP podcasts by going to our YX Lost feed page or subscribe directly to the Big Brother feed at robhasawebsite.com/bigbrother. You'll find a ton of great content, whichever feed you decide to follow. There's tons of stuff going on there. So make sure you find the one that you want, follow it, and get, all of the podcasts, especially ours.
And finally, we want to thank Scott St. Pierre, Jessica Sterling, and the whole RHAP and reality TV wrap-ups behind the scenes team for all the work they do editing and putting and posting and everything else. We really appreciate everything you do to get our voices from our microphones to your ears. And most definitely, I have to thank all the listeners, all the watchers. Thank you for tuning in this week. Let us know your thoughts. Do you feel like Brooklyn went home outside of a reason we didn't say? Or which rule do you feel like she disrespected the most to send her out of the home? Let us know. And as always, interact with us on social media. We want to hear your thoughts, and we appreciate you tuning in.
Yep. Thank you very much, Ovi, for another great episode in the middle of your travels, literally taking time out in the middle of traveling. We will be back next week. One or both of us may be at a mystery location next week, so who knows what's going to happen then. But we want to make sure that we always get the podcast into you. So we will see everyone in a week. Bye.
Sounds good. See ya.